Good morning. Hi. That's always nice. It doesn't happen that often at home that you stand up and people begin clapping. So, I should teach my children this. It's really a deep honor to be invited back. Thank you very much. And I find that I say yes to things very quickly. You know, I get an invitation and I say yes, and then the weekend gets closer and closer, and my stress level goes up and up and up. And then about 2 days before I speak, I think, why did I say yes? What am I going to say? And then by the time we get to Sunday morning, I feel much better. And then by the time I'm in front of all of you, it's fine. So it's lovely to be here this morning. I would love to get a sense of who in the room has never heard me speak before. How many of you are like brand new? Okay, great. So that is, luckily, the majority, and I'll give you a little bit more background. Sometimes when I'm speaking to people who've heard me talk before, I cut some things out because I know they're going to know them already. But I was born in South Africa. I lived there until I was 2. Then I moved to Malawi, so I was in South Central Africa for nursery school, elementary school in Germany, Munich, middle school back in South Africa during the state of emergency in apartheid South Africa, high school in LA, Marymount Girls High School. Went to the U of M for college, came out here, went to the U, did my BA in psychology and English, bartended for 5 years while I figured out who I was, big identity crisis, went back to school, got my master's degree in education, worked at the Academy of Holy Angels, worked in the Robbinsdale School District. At that point thought, I don't really want to end up in Minnesota full time, so I should try and get out of here now. So I took a teaching job in Egypt, lived in Egypt for 5 years, lived in the UK for 5 years, lived in Tucson for a while, Bali, Indonesia for a while, and then in 2007, missed Minnesota, so I'm back. I actually really love living in the Twin Cities, and it seems I am going to be here for quite a long time now. I left teaching, I became a clinical psychologist, I work as an organizational psychologist, I work with CEOs and leaders and teams. I do a lot of leadership development, and I have a private practice, so I also do therapy. So that's a little bit about what I do here locally. I also do a lot of speaking and a lot of teaching. And so what I was thinking about in terms of your monthly theme of owning your impact, and I was thinking about my particular area of fascination that I think I've built a lot of my life around, which is around communication, how we use communication, how we use words, how communication for me is much more than the words we use, even though they're super powerful. But communication for me is about how you live and what you communicate in your very way of being in the world. So, you know, most of our communication is nonverbal anyway. The way you walk into a room, the way you sit in a room, the way you listen to somebody else, your facial expression, the way that you feel in your body, all of this communicates to other people something about your inner being. And then we add words on top of all of that, which can communicate even more. And one of the things that has always fascinated me is the gap that I experience for myself and that I'm hoping you'll recognize. The gap between intention and impact. Have you ever experienced this gap? Right? Yes. Where I'm really intending one thing, but your reaction is telling me that it is not coming across to you at all in the way that I'm intending. And so then we get these gaps in communication. And usually when that happens, our default is to get defensive. Does that make sense? Right? And so then we have this like defensive default. And that's also not my intention. Because really, for most of us, what we're trying to do is love one another. I mean, if we really boil it down, most of the time, I'm trying to connect with you in some way. I'm wanting to be known. I'm wanting you to know me. I'm wanting to be seen for who I am. I'm wanting to see you for who you are. I mean, most of the time when we're interacting with other human beings, there is a foundation of wanting to see and be seen, known and be known, connect with one another, feel safe with one another. And so much of what we do and so much of what we say is scared and defensive and is not in alignment with the impact we're wanting to have. Does this resonate? Are people recognizing this? Okay, thank you. All right. So before I dive into some thoughts and some strategies, and hopefully today I would love to give you a few tools to work with that, to bridge that gap. It'll be helpful if we take a minute and just turn to somebody sitting next to you and tell each other a story about a time when you have experienced a gap between your intention and the impact. What were you trying to communicate? What was the intention in the thing that you were doing or saying? How did you know that it wasn't landing accurately? What did you do? What was that like for you? And just share a couple of stories, because I'm going to talk a little bit around that today. And it'll be helpful if you're a little bit more involved, because it can be very tiring to listen to somebody for a full 45 minutes. So take 5 minutes right now, share a couple of stories with some people around you, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, so everybody feel complete? Yes. So it seems from the volume in the room that people did not have a hard time coming up with some situations. So it seems like I'm not the only person who has a problem with intention and impact. So I'll share with you some things that have helped me with it, some things in my own journey. You take what works, leave anything that you think is nonsense, okay? A lot of the work that I do is deeply based in the work of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, who developed a communication model called nonviolent communication. So a lot of what I will teach will sound familiar to those of you who are familiar with that communication model. I integrated a lot. I'm not a certified trainer. I integrate the NVC model with a lot of integral theory and a lot of spiral dynamics and mindfulness and adult development theory. And so I always feel like I need to make that disclaimer so you know what you're getting. But essentially, when we're thinking about this gap between intention and impact, when I find that gap, it's usually a cue to me that there's something that I haven't slowed down to become aware of. If I haven't slowed down to become aware of something, then I'm acting out of default scripts that I internalized from my childhood. And I want to be very, very careful that I don't confuse my internalized scripts that I absorbed as a child with who I am. Because we confuse that a lot. We find ourselves thinking in certain ways and doing certain things, and we make the mistake of thinking that that's who I am. And so I challenge you to put some more space in there. I find it more helpful to think about my default responses as what I internalized from a domination system that I was raised in. They are thought habits, they are perception habits, they are relational habits that worked as a child in a power structure when people had power over me. And unexamined, I'll continue living my life out of those scripts. Those will be my default defenses when I'm scared. But that is not who I think I am. That is what I see as my own awareness work, and my own healing work, and my own self-empowerment work. But it's not who I am. It is what I've inherited. So that does make it uniquely my responsibility to do something with if I choose to. I can be creative with it, or I can be a victim of it. Okay? In order for me to be creative with it, one of the things that I have found helpful is to disidentify from it, to not confuse scared, selfish habits with me. But I have a lot of scared and selfish habits. Human beings do. When we're under stress, we get scared, and when we get scared, we default into selfish mode, survival mode, me-only mode, my perspective, my feelings, my safety. And then you try and have an intimate relationship. Right? It doesn't work so well. Although that might just be me too. So, no, okay, good. Okay, you and me, we've got that. Okay. So one of the things I would invite you to think about is we're all scared and selfish. And that's our default under stress. And it's not who we are. Because as human beings, we have much greater capacity than that. We have the capacity for healing. We have the capacity for awareness. Once we get aware of something, we have the capacity to make a choice. And so this question about choice, I want to slow down and just mention, you do not have choice over something that you are not aware of yet. So the only thing that you're really responsible for are the things you're aware of. And luckily we're wired in such a way that there's a limited amount of stuff that you can be aware of in any given time. And I would say, and that's your work. Forget about the iceberg of the rest of the work that you probably have, and just trust that your system is going to generate for you whatever your best next step is, and that's the thing that will be in your awareness. And you do have choicefulness and creativity over the things you're aware of. And don't worry about the rest for now. Because once you metabolize the stuff you're aware of, the good bad news is the next layer comes up. Okay? And then the next layer comes up, and as you clear that away, then yet another layer comes up. But you don't want to get overwhelmed with all of the layers that you may find inside yourself, so you just work with the pieces that you are aware of in the moment. Okay. So we want to get aware of the scripts we've internalized. Scripts we've internalized are control scripts. We grow up as children with many, many authority figures having power over us. And so the first thing we learn about is inequitable power systems. What does it mean to have power and no power? Okay? And so we begin experiencing ourselves as victims and or perpetrators. The abused or the abuser. The privileged or the disempowered. So we start learning about these contrasts. Most of us don't like being in the position of not having power, and so we take over the position of power, but unexamined, at least from childhood scripts, most of us don't learn about shared power. We don't actually learn about interdependence. We don't learn about cooperation and treating one another with dignity. That's not most of our story. I don't know all of you. I'm sure some of you have had that story. It wasn't mine. And so the internalized script is you have to kind of climb the ladder. Because the way to be safe in that world is to be as far up the ladder as you can. And the problem is, the more you climb up the ladder, the more other people need to be underneath. Okay? And so there's no way of sort of winning at that game. The language we use when we're in a scared, selfish control frame tends to be forceful language, designed to try to get power over a situation or to get power over another person. And how do we do that? Well, we get a lot of training in our school systems. You've got to be critical. That's valued. You've got to be judgmental. That's valued. You've got to think analytically. You've got to take ideas and pull them apart into pieces. You've got to analyze. You need to interpret. So you don't read a book for the beauty of it, and you don't read a book because it's enjoyable, or because it feeds your soul, or because it creates and stirs something inside of you. You don't get tested on that. You get tested on your ability to align your interpretation of that book with the interpretation of the critics, and how well you can bring those two together to prove how good you are at critical analysis. Yeah? So we start internalizing these ways of being. These are the ways of being in the society I was raised in anyway, that get you more power and more choices and more freedom. Now you're a good person and this is who you are. And then we try and we take these skills to human relationships. So somebody does something and we don't like it very much. They have a feeling we don't like it very much. Maybe they're angry. And we're trained to think through the lens of what is wrong. And so this person has a feeling, and my default is, what is wrong? And the moment that I start thinking through that dualistic frame, I'm really giving myself one of two options in the control world, which is it's either going to be you or me, right? There's either something wrong with you or something wrong with your feelings, or there's something wrong with me, and then we try to fix the problem. But now, you see what we've done is we've made the people the problem. And so I need to either fix you or I need to fix me. And so I'm going to slow down and ask you, how often do you feel good when somebody is trying to fix you? Do you enjoy that? It doesn't really work, right? I mean, I just haven't had a lot of experiences of being able to say, you know, honey, the problem with you is that you're lazy and you have no self-discipline. And have my 13-year-old turn to me and say, Mom, that was really helpful insight. It doesn't come across that way. And yet I'm trying so hard to be helpful. So these default scripts don't work. And yet we keep using them. We keep trying to fix one another. And, okay, so we keep trying to fix one another. I want to talk a little bit about language, because I want you to get aware of language. The bad news about all of you being here today is that I'm hoping to raise your awareness around how you use language and the impact that you have when you use particular kinds of language. And so, you know, in about half an hour, you'll all have choice. And then you do whatever you want with it, okay? But if you don't know this, you're not really responsible for it. But now that you're going to know it, sorry. Okay? So here are the language habits. We evaluate one another. We're constantly putting each other into good, bad categories. Healthy, unhealthy, functional, dysfunctional, appropriate, inappropriate. So we're constantly evaluating, always dividing. You know, evaluation and analysis is a fragmenting energy. It divides us, it disconnects us. Quick tangent. That's actually a really helpful skill. Okay? The way that we understand something is by breaking it into parts and then putting it back together. We just aren't good at putting it back together, relationally. We're really good at dividing each other into parts, but then we're kind of splayed out on the table, wounded, and then what? What do we do? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So one, evaluation. Not that evaluation is bad, but it's incomplete. Second thing is, we are taught to put our focus on our thinking. We are taught to disconnect from and override all other data points. What you feel is not relevant. What you need is not relevant. What you want is not relevant. What is relevant is the curriculum of this classroom, the agenda of this family, the schedule of the stressed out parent. That's relevant. But how you're feeling along the way, not usually. And what you are needing along the way, not usually. And what you're asking for along the way, wait until later, not the time for it. So the way that many of us are raised are to put ourselves aside in the service of functioning in particular productive roles for other people, often authority figures. And the way to be safe in that system is to be obedient and compliant and to be externally focused. Making sense? Okay. So we learn because it's painful, and when we're children we can't do anything about the pain. We learn to disconnect. That's how we survive. It's not, I don't need to know what I'm feeling. I need to know if my behavior is good or bad. I don't need to know what I'm needing. No one cares about what I'm needing. I just need to know if I'm showing up in an appropriate way to get the approval of other people so that I'm safe and not yelled at. So that's what we bring into adulthood. And then here's the big crisis of the generations that just never grow up. We get stuck there and we don't ever grow up. We keep functioning from a dependent child victim place because we haven't had enough awareness to see it, and we make the mistake of thinking it's who we are. So, language, evaluative language, critical language, thought-based, cognitive, thinking. I'll tell you what I think about you. The next thing that you see a lot of is strategizing and solutions. So the other thing that I get really good at using language for and telling you the solution and the strategy and how you can fix it and what you should do and have you tried this. You know, I was working with a CEO. We were doing some executive coaching, and she's telling me about one of her executive directors had come in, had an incredibly stressful week, had lost some employees, and so stressed out, began talking to the CEO, and she began tearing up. Not the CEO, the executive director. The CEO got so uncomfortable with the tears that her response, she wanted to be compassionate. And her compassionate response to her executive director was, I think you need to go home, have a glass of wine, and pull yourself together. Why don't you take the rest of the day off? The intention was to be caring. I have no doubt that the intention was to care for the well-being, and yet there were so many things wrong with that response, right? And so many things that were so indicative of the culture we live in. Your feelings are not really welcome here. I feel uncomfortable when you're getting real with me in a way that is tender. In our culture, it's normative to go and numb it out using some version of an external substance. You pull yourself together in private and alone, and then come back and be public when you can be productive and working again. Right? I mean, this is the culture we live in. It's dangerous. And then we also make a lot of demands of one another. We're constantly telling one another, you have to do this, you must do this. We're taking choices away from one another all the time, which is dangerous for the human being who is wired for freedom of choice. Fundamental drive in the human being is to have freedom, to have choicefulness. And we want to use our freedom and choicefulness in the service of connection. But our cultures don't trust that. We see them as separate. That either you're free and choiceful and then independent and isolated, or you get connection, but then you're really like enmeshed and codependent. So we've done this really crazy split where we don't have a lot of models on how to integrate this and how human beings are actually, I believe, intrinsically motivated to use their freedom, their creativity, and their choicefulness to improve their relationships. That's what most of us are wanting. So what is it, the shift that we need to make if we're going to move from being scared and selfish and constantly interacting in ways where the impact we're having and our deep intentions are so disconnected from one another? The first step is that we need to move away from our primary objective being controlling ourselves and other people. And we need to shift into a deep, deep intention to connect with ourselves and other people. That's the primary shift. Instead of being afraid of people and therefore needing to act upon them like objects in order to control them so that I feel safer, I want to shift into a more courageous space where my primary intention is to be with you, to know you, to connect with you, to understand you, and to build trust and connection. Because the kind of safety that I am going to get from a trusting relationship is gold and fundamentally different than the illusion of safety that I'm going to get when I'm micromanaging you. Does that make sense? Okay. So the first shift I would invite you to make is to start getting aware of every time that you're saying something, whether your agenda is to control and change somebody, or to be with them, connect with them, love them, know them, understand them. Fundamental shift. And then there are 4 kinds of language and attention that you can practice that support that shift in very practical ways. Yes? The choice from scared and selfish. How? Yep. Yes. Let me give you a specific, well, I'll give you a story. Stories are lovely. Here's the shift. From acting upon, controlling, changing, and micromanaging someone, so you're angry and I need to make your feeling go away. I'm sure none of you do that, right? Somebody around you is angry, and then the default childhood script is, what have I done wrong, or this anger is wrong and I need to make it go away. Scared and selfish. I'm just going to bat for me. I'm not really present to what you're angry about. Shift. What's happening for you? Tell me about the anger. What's getting activated? How can I be with this? How do I relax around your anger and get to know you? How do I de-escalate? How do I be with? How do I understand? How do I connect with? That's the shift. Here's the story. Actually, I'm going to hold on the story. I'm going to give you the 4 practices, and then I'll tell you the story. And hopefully that will... And if I haven't answered your question adequately, you can just raise your hand and I'll loop back to you. Is that all right? Okay. 4 practices. Instead of evaluating everything, which you will do as a default, that will not go away. You start turning up the volume on your ability to simultaneously, mindfully observe everything. Yeah? So you develop a mindfulness practice in which you start to disidentify with the stuff you've inherited. And you begin to see it as the material I've been given to work with, which is not who I am. If I think it's who I am, I'm going to get defensive. If I see it as the work that I have the opportunity to do, but only if I choose to, I'll be able to relax around it. Part of that work is understanding that every human experience is also my experience. So you start working on integrating all experiences. I am a rageaholic. I have borderline personality disorder. I'm sure I have narcissistic personality disorder. I also have dependent personality disorder. Whichever one it is, it's like when you go through medical school and they say you get every disease as you go. I think the same thing is true if we can just say I'm a victim and I'm a perpetrator and whatever it is that human beings are capable of, I will find that in me. And it will no longer be a not me. It's just something that gives me access to shared humanity. Because until I can own it, I can do nothing about it. And until I can own it, I will not be able to empathize with you when you're stuck in it. And so in terms of sharing power with one another, we stop getting freaked out by all the bad things we could be, and we make peace with it, and we say, yes, okay. I read a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh recently that I really loved that said, one of the most useful practices is to say, yes, I am that, but that is not all of who I am. So whatever somebody accuses you of, you can say, yes, that is a part of me, but it is not all of me. So if you need just a mantra to help you get out of resistance to all the awful labels you've been called, that generate in you a lot of reactivity, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me, just relax. Yes, that's a part of me, but it's not all of me. Okay? So first practice is we get very, very good at mindful observation of everything. The second one is we drop our attention out of our brilliant overactive minds, and we drop our attention down to our heart and gut, and we get back into our abdomens. And once you've done that, you can use all your extremities as well, okay? But you get aware of more data going on in your system. so that you are not only spinning off of your thinking, which is a really dangerous place to live if that's the only place you live. You get back in touch with the feelings that are going through you. You actually know what you're feeling. You actually start knowing, third thing, what am I needing? Most of us were not given the kinds of relational interactions that allow us to know what we need. You know, when our kids are acting up, we tell them what to do. We tell them how to be different. We tell them about their behavior. Or, you know, something that happened to me a lot as a kid is if I had strong feelings, go to your room until you self-regulate and come back when you can, you know, be blah, 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 appropriate in some way. And so for many of us, if you had anything similar to that, it's a little traumatizing to sit with my feelings on my own because it feels like a rejection. And actually, young kids need an adult to help them regulate that and to help them come back down again. So going and sitting with our feelings alone was sometimes a punishment, and so we have resistance to doing that, which is why empathic communities are important, so that we can have our feelings in community with one another, which is something that many people in the modern world are missing. So having feelings alone is a distressing thing. You want to have a feeling with someone, and with someone who isn't trying to change your feeling. You know, feelings are a lot like the weather. They just come and they go, and once it's done raining, it's done raining. There's really nothing to do, okay? Witness, get present, sit through it. That's all there is to do with a feeling. Your feelings are designed to tell you about your needs, however. When your body needs fuel, it needs a way of telling you about what it needs. So what does it do? It generates a feeling. And suddenly you're like, ooh, hunger. Hungry feeling. Hungry feeling is an alert that I need to get fuel. I get enough fuel, what happens to the feeling? Gone. So if you want to change your feelings, meet your needs. If you want to change your feelings, meet your needs. What are we trained to do? Act on them. Override them, numb them out, act them out, dismiss them, disconnect from them, make them go away. We freak out around feelings. And then we analyze them. We throw a lot of theory and analysis after the feelings as a way of trying to make them manageable. So, if you want to change a feeling, meet the need. If I am feeling lonely, I may be needing companionship. If I get some companionship, what's going to happen to lonely? It shifts and moves to the next thing, and then I have space for new data to come up. This is about working with yourself, right? But this is what I hear in my 13-year-old. She's feeling lonely, and we're getting better at this, but does she say, Mom, I'm feeling lonely. I think I need a friend to come over. I think I need some companionship. No, we're not quite there yet. She's like, oh, I'm so bored. I'm such a loser. What do you mean you're such a loser? Well, there's no one here and I'm just sitting home alone. Oh, you're feeling lonely. Yeah. I wonder if you'd like somebody to come over and hang out. Oh, yeah. It's very different than I'm such a loser, which is what our culture. Something is happening, interpret. And the interpretation is good, bad. Where do I rank? So we want to start watching that, and we want to start working against that. If you have a feeling, meet the need. If somebody around you is having a feeling, ask about what they need. They won't know, by the way. They'll tell you what they think. But you can start guessing. I wonder if you're needing to be heard. I'm wondering if you're needing space. I'm wondering if you're needing some empathy. I'm wondering if you're needing meaning, purpose. I wonder if this is coming up because you really need a lot more choicefulness in the situation. Get their attention on their needs, their intrinsic motivators, the energy that is rising through their system that has intuitive intelligence for them about what they need for their well-being. Get them back connected to their own innate wisdom. There's nothing for you to do other than to get yourself back connected and to help other people reconnect. And then every organism will have its own intelligence about what that next step looks like. You don't need to fix it. And then the fourth one is make a practice of stop telling people what to do and instead offer invitations that are relational. Let me know, I'm wondering how this is landing on you. Tell me more about how all this is landing on you. What's coming up in you as you hear me say this? What are you hearing me saying? When I say all of this to you, tell me what you're hearing in it. Make a lot more relational requests of one another so that you can shift out of scared, selfish, defensive, fearful, control, and into courageous, grounded, aligned, in tune with what I'm really wanting, and then much more skillful around helping you be self-connected and helping us have a lot more connection. Now I'm going to give you the story. So I teach all this stuff. It's nice cognitive, it's all cognitive. So you've got this great framework. And then every day I don't do it. Okay, just so you know. Still struggle. So I had an incident that happened recently where I had plans with my partner. I was really, really looking forward to them, really, so invested and attached to this thing happening. And then as life happens, all kinds of things got in the way. And he called me up and he was like, I can't make it. I have to do this, I have to do that, blah, 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 blah. And I had a feeling about that. But I didn't want to know the feeling that I was having. So I said, that's fine. Okay, yes, I understand. I'm sure none of you ever do that, right? Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, I get it. I know, blah, 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 blah. But I was getting a little annoyed by the I have to. He was like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And I was like, yeah, but I just want to slow down. He said to me, I'm hearing some energy in your voice around this. I was like, yeah, I think I'm just a little annoyed. I would like you to just own the fact that you're choosing this. Like, you're choosing to change plans on me, and that's okay. I'm okay with the changing of plans, but I just want you to own it as a choice you're making. You can hear in my tone of voice, right? All right. So it's like, okay, I can see you're activated. Yes, but no, it's fine. Okay. So why do we do that? Why do we do that? Do you ever do this? Right? Okay. Even though I have all the theory, I'll tell you this. It was never okay, it was never safe in my family to actually feel what you were feeling. And for those of you who don't know me, my mother is a psychologist, my father is a psychologist, my sister is a psychologist. Okay. So what we were good at our family get-togethers is analysis. We are so good at analyzing and talking about feelings. We don't feel them, mind you, but we do know how to talk about them. So what do? I'm stressed out. I'm actually, in hindsight, I'm actually feeling vulnerable. And I don't know that I'm feeling vulnerable because what's happened is my security systems have kicked in. And I'm in an inner conflict because I don't want to be needy and dependent. I don't want to be demanding. That's bad in our culture, so we're not going to be that. And I want to be understanding and magnanimous and generous, but I'm really not feeling that way, so I'm talking myself into it. But it's not real. And so even though I'm trying to force myself into this template of the good way to be and the healthy way to be, because trust me, I have that all internalized, the impact is not sending this person the message that I'm okay with it, right? So this is one of the things, when we're talking about owning your impact, that's about dropping down and getting real. And we don't want to drop down and get real. I certainly did not. At that point, he said, I can as easily choose to just come over right now for an hour. I'm like, no. Then I'll feel guilty. He's like, I'll be right there. So the whole time, I'm now feeling guilty. I'm now like, I'm this really controlling partner. And I'm in such inner conflict with myself, and I start thinking, okay, this is about, when I was a child and expectations from my father and disappointments, and, I am now working overtime to try and understand myself, because that's the scared defensive default. Intellectualize, analyze, interpret. We're supposed to explain our feeling. We're supposed to justify our feeling. So by the time he arrives, I'm like, listen, I'm just feeling really unsettled. I'm really sorry. Can we talk about this? I really am fine with, slows me down. I'm in a swirl. Holds my shoulders and he says, slow down. Can I tell you what I think is going on? Yes. He says, I think you're feeling hurt and I think you're disappointed because you were really looking forward to things going a certain way today and it looks like it's not going to happen in the way we planned. That's it. So I cry. And I just, it's that moment where when you're known and it's safe to be known, your whole body, oh yeah, gives me a huge hug. I cry for about a minute. I feel much better. There's nothing else needed. No analysis, no explanation, no discussion. It was okay. It was safe to feel hurt. It was safe to feel disappointed. We held it together. We still didn't get what we wanted, but it didn't cause damage. We didn't get our preference for that day. Big deal. Does that make sense? What did you say? Too much sense. Too much sense. Now, that kind of empathic reaction is not our default. It's just not our default. It is something that we practice our way into. And, the irony of all of this is I looked at him, I'm like, I teach this. He goes, I know. I know you do. But it's really hard to implement when you're feeling hurt and vulnerable. And so I tell you that story because the shift that I'm describing is, 1, profound, and 2, incredibly difficult, and 3, so simple. So simple. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Align yourself with what you're feeling. Make it safe to know what you're feeling. Make it safe to know what you're needing. Make it safe for other people to join you in that space. It's faster, it's more transformative, and it's far more fun than scared and selfish and controlling. Okay? So, thank you. So for closing, I brought a poem that reportedly was on Mother Teresa's wall. I adapted it a little bit, and I have copies if you want it, but I'm going to just read it to you to close. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you, your divinity, your higher power, your wiser self. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you.